You wake up in the middle of the night again. The clock on your nightstand glows 3:17 in soft red numbers, and your mind is already running at full speed. It is not racing towards some exciting future or solving a real problem right in front of you. No, it is replaying that conversation from last week word for word. It is calculating every possible outcome of a decision you have not even made yet. It is whispering all the reasons why you cannot start that thing you have been dreaming about for years. And the most painful part is that this is not new. This has become your normal. You lie there exhausted, yet unable to sleep, because the conversation inside your head never stops. It never gives you a moment of peace. You tell yourself you will deal with it in the morning, but morning comes and the loop simply continues while you brush your teeth, make coffee, and drive to work. You feel it right now, do you not? As these words reach you, there is already a part of your mind analyzing them, wondering if this is really about you or just another self-help idea that will not stick. That is the prison talking. That endless internal chatter has been with you so long it feels like a loyal friend offering wisdom and protection. But deep down, you know better. It has quietly stolen nights of real rest, moments of genuine connection, and years of potential action while you believed you were simply being thoughtful. You have watched opportunities pass you by, not because the world blocked you, but because your own thoughts built the wall. You have felt the slow erosion of your confidence as every what-if scenario drained the energy you needed to move. And here's the part that creates the deepest discomfort. You are not alone in this. Millions of people just like you wake up to the same invisible battle every single day, convinced they are one more night of thinking away from finally breaking free. Yet nothing changes. The life you want stays just out of reach, and the ache in your chest grows heavier with each passing season. This is the prison inside your mind. It does not look like bars or locked doors. It looks like productivity. It looks like careful planning. It looks like being responsible. But it is stealing your life one quiet thought at a time. You have probably told yourself that overthinking is just how smart people operate. You have convinced yourself that if you analyze long enough, the perfect path will reveal itself. Yet here you are, still listening, still searching, still trapped in the same cycle that has kept you stuck for longer than you want to admit. What if the real reason your dreams feel so far away is not lack of time or resources or luck, but this relentless conversation happening between your ears right now? What if every hour you spend inside your head is an hour you are not spending in your actual life? The tension you feel as you hear these words is not random. It is recognition. It is the first crack in the wall you have built around yourself. And that crack matters because once you see the prison, clearly you can finally begin to walk out. Think about how this shows up in your daily experience. You sit down to work on something important, and within minutes your mind drifts to all the other things you should be doing. You start planning your day, but end up lost in scenarios that may never happen. You want to reach out to someone you care about, but instead you rehearse the conversation in your head until the moment passes and the opportunity fades. These are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a deeper pattern that behavioral psychology has studied for decades. Your brain evolved to keep you safe by anticipating threats and solving problems in the ancient world that kept you alive. In the modern world, it has become a silent thief, turning every possibility into a problem and every decision into a potential disaster. You feel the emotional weight of it, even if you cannot name it yet. The low-level anxiety that follows you through your days. The quiet regret that surfaces when you see someone else taking the steps you keep thinking about. The exhaustion that comes not from physical work, but from the constant mental labor of managing thoughts that lead nowhere. And yet you keep returning to the same habit because it feels familiar. It feels like control. You tell yourself you are preparing. You tell yourself you are being smart. But preparation without action is simply another form of avoidance. The mind loves this game because it releases small hits of satisfaction every time you think through a scenario or make a mental list. You feel productive even when your real life stays exactly the same. That is the cruel genius of the prison. It disguises itself so perfectly that you defend it. You protect the very thing that is holding you captive. You have done this for months, perhaps years. The dreams you once spoke about with excitement have become quiet whispers you barely acknowledge anymore. The version of yourself that could have emerged stays locked away while the thinking continues. Consider how this pattern has already shaped your path. Remember the last time you felt truly excited about a change. You researched it. You thought about it constantly. You even told a friend or two that this time would be different. Then the thinking took over. Doubts crept in. Questions multiplied. And before you knew it, the excitement had cooled into another unfinished idea. This is not weakness. This is the human mind doing exactly what it was wired to do when left unchecked. It creates loops of rumination that feel like progress, but deliver only stagnation. The emotional tension builds because part of you knows the truth. Part of you recognizes that the life slipping away is not someone else's story. It is yours. And that recognition creates the discomfort you feel right now. Good. Lean into it. That discomfort is the signal that something important is finally breaking through. You have probably noticed how this overthinking affects your relationships too. You analyze every text message before sending it. You rehearse conversations that never happen. You hold back from being fully present because your mind is busy evaluating what might go wrong. The result is connection that feels shallow even with the people you love most. You want deeper bonds, but the internal conversation keeps you at a distance. The same pattern shows up in your health, your finances, your personal growth. You know what you need to do. You have thought about it endlessly, yet the action never follows. The prison is subtle that way. It does not slam the door in your face. It simply keeps you walking in circles inside a room you cannot see. Now here's where the real shift begins to happen. Once you understand how deeply this pattern controls your daily experience, you can start to see the specific mechanisms that keep the prison walls intact. One of the most powerful of those mechanisms is something that feels completely harmless on the surface. It even feels productive. Let us explore it together because recognizing it might be the first real step toward freedom you have taken in a long time. The illusion of progress is one of the sneakiest traps your mind sets for you. Thinking often feels productive even when nothing is changing in your actual life. Your brain rewards you with a quiet sense of accomplishment every time you sit down to plan or analyze or run through mental scenarios. You feel like you are moving forward because the activity inside your head is so intense. But that activity is not progress. It is motion without momentum. Excessive planning creates a false sense of achievement because it tricks your mind into believing the work is already done. You spend hours creating detailed lists, outlining every possible step, and imagining the perfect outcome. The dopamine flows. You feel prepared and responsible. Meanwhile, the real world stays exactly as it was. No steps are taken. No risks are embraced. The plan becomes the prison. Take Michael, a 42-year-old operations manager living in Seattle. He had dreamed for years of turning his hobby of custom woodworking into a small online business. The idea excited him. He could picture the workshop, the website, the satisfied customers. So he started planning. For nearly 2 years, he spent his evenings researching tools and suppliers, building spreadsheets of costs and profits, designing logos, and even creating sample product descriptions. He joined woodworking forums and read every article about starting a side hustle. He told his wife and close friends that things were really coming together. He felt productive. He felt like he was finally doing something meaningful with his life after years in a corporate job that left him drained. The plans looked professional. The research was thorough. Anyone looking at his notebooks would have said he was well on his way, but the business never launched. Not a single piece of furniture was listed for sale. Not one customer was ever contacted. Michael had confused thinking with doing. The illusion kept him comfortable in the planning phase where failure was impossible because nothing was actually at stake. 2 years later, he sat in his garage surrounded by unused tools and half-finished sketches and realized the dream had quietly died while he was busy preparing for it. The story hurts because it is so familiar. You have likely done something similar in your own way. The mind loves this illusion because it protects you from the discomfort of real action while still letting you feel like you are someone who is going somewhere. But the cost is enormous. While you plan, life keeps moving. The window of opportunity narrows. Your energy for the idea slowly drains away. And one day you wake up wondering why you never started. This illusion is not harmless. It is the reason so many talented, intelligent people reach the end of their lives with a quiet sense of what could have been. Recognizing it creates an important question for you right now. How much of your own time have you spent in the comfortable glow of planning instead of the uncertain territory of doing? The answer might surprise you, and it might also set you free. Yet the illusion of progress is only the beginning. There is another layer that makes the escape even harder. Your mind does not just create the feeling of movement. It can also freeze you completely when faced with too many options. Let us look at how this happens and why the hidden cost of indecision might be stealing more from you than you realize. Analysis paralysis is the state your mind enters when too many choices create mental shutdown. You want to make a decision. You gather information. You weigh every angle. And suddenly the options multiply, and until forward movement feels impossible. The brain becomes overwhelmed by possibilities, and instead of choosing it, simply stops. The hidden cost of this indecision is not just lost time. It is the gradual erosion of your confidence, your opportunities, and your sense of agency in your own life. Every day you delay is a day the world moves on without you. Relationships fade. Skills go unlearned. Ideas lose their freshness. You stay stuck while life passes by, and the regret builds so quietly you barely notice until it becomes a constant companion. Consider Lisa, a 38-year-old marketing coordinator living in Portland. She had been unhappy in her job for years and knew she wanted a change. The problem was she could not decide what that change should look like. She researched career coaching programs, online courses in digital design, freelance opportunities, and even going back to school for a completely different field. She made pros and cons lists for each path. She talked to friends and family and spent countless hours reading reviews and success stories. Every time she leaned toward one option, a new article or conversation would introduce doubts, and she would start the analysis all over again. Months turned into years. She stayed in the same role. She disliked watching colleagues get promoted or leave for better positions. The indecision had paralyzed her so completely that even small steps felt overwhelming. By the time she finally forced herself to choose something, the fire that once burned inside her had cooled. The career she eventually picked felt safe, but it was no longer the bold move she had once imagined. Lisa lost more than time. She lost the version of herself that believed she could create something better. The paralysis had disguised itself as careful consideration, but it was really fear wearing a logical mask. You have felt this paralysis yourself. Maybe it was choosing a vacation destination or a new phone or a major life change like moving or starting a family. The pattern is the same. The more you think, the less you act. And the hidden cost compounds. Each undecided moment reinforces the belief that you cannot trust yourself to choose wisely. The prison grows stronger. But here is the unexpected insight that can break the cycle. Sometimes the best decision is simply to decide. Not because you have analyzed every detail, but because staying in indecision is the only guaranteed way to lose. And behind both the illusion of progress And the paralysis of analysis lies something even more fundamental, something that drives the entire pattern from the shadows. Let us turn our attention to the fears that fuel every delay, because understanding them might finally explain why you keep returning to the same mental loops even when you know they are not helping. The fear behind every delay is rarely obvious. It hides in plain sight, wearing the clothes of logic and reason. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right time, or gathering more information, or being realistic. But underneath those reasonable-sounding thoughts are deeper fears. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of making the wrong choice and having to live with the consequences. These fears do not announce themselves loudly. They whisper. They dress up as prudence. They convince you that thinking longer is the responsible thing to do. The disguise is so convincing that you defend the fear as wisdom. Yet every time you choose delay over action, and the fear grows a little stronger, and your life grows a little smaller. Picture Mark, a high school history teacher living in Denver. For years, he had wanted to propose to his girlfriend of 7 years. He loved her deeply and knew she was the one. But every time the moment approached, he found himself thinking through all the possible outcomes. What if she said no? What if they got married and it did not work out? What if his friends and family judged him for rushing? What if he was not ready? The fears wore the mask of careful consideration. He told himself he was just making sure. He planned elaborate proposals in his mind, then talked himself out of them because the timing was not perfect, or the ring was not quite right. 5 years passed this way. The relationship began to feel the strain of unspoken expectations. One evening, his girlfriend sat him down and asked if he saw a future for them. The conversation forced him to confront what he had been avoiding. The fear of failure and judgment had disguised itself so well that he had almost lost the woman he loved. Mark eventually proposed, and she said yes. But the years of delay had created distance that took time to heal. The story stays with you because it shows how fear can steal the most important moments while pretending to protect you. You recognize this pattern in your own life too. The job you have not applied for, the conversation you have not started, the creative project you have not begun. Each delay feels logical until you look back and see the pattern of fear dressed as reason. The mind is clever that way. It keeps you safe by keeping you small. Yet even when you see the fear clearly, something else keeps pulling you back. Your brain itself seems wired to love comfort more than growth. Let us examine why that is and how those invisible comfort zones have become the most effective walls of your personal prison. Your brain loves comfort because it is wired for survival, not for thriving. From an evolutionary perspective, safety was always the priority. The brain prioritizes avoiding pain and uncertainty over pursuing growth and possibility. That is why avoidance feels so natural. The psychology of avoidance is simple. Your mind seeks to minimize immediate discomfort, even if it means accepting long-term dissatisfaction. Comfort zones become invisible prisons because they feel so familiar you stop noticing the walls. You tell yourself you are resting or recharging when really you are hiding. The brain rewards you with temporary relief every time you choose the known over the unknown. But that relief comes at the price of a life half-lived. Remember Anna, a graphic designer living in Austin. She had built a successful career working for the same company for 12 years. The job was comfortable. The routines were predictable. The paycheck was steady. Deep down, she knew she wanted to strike out on her own and start a freelance studio focused on work that truly excited her. But every time she considered leaving the safety of her current role, her brain flooded her with reasons to stay. The steady income, the familiar team, the low risk of failure. Avoidance felt like wisdom. She told herself she would make the leap when things felt more stable. Years passed. Colleagues came and went. The industry evolved around her. Anna stayed exactly where she was, watching others take the risks she only dreamed about. Her comfort zone had become a prison, so comfortable she almost forgot she was inside it. The memorable part of her story is the quiet regret she carried. Not dramatic failure, but the slow realization that safety had quietly replaced fulfillment. You have your own version of this comfort zone, the routines that numb you, the habits that keep you small. The brain loves them because they require no risk. But growth always lives on the other side of discomfort. The prison convinces you that staying inside is the smart choice. Understanding this psychology is the key to seeing the walls for what they are. And while you wait in that comfort, something else is happening. Time is passing and the cost is mounting in ways you cannot see until it is too late. Let us look at the opportunity cost of waiting, because this hidden price might be the most painful of all. The opportunity cost of waiting is everything you never get to experience because you never begin. Delayed decisions secretly cost you opportunities, relationships, experiences, and personal growth that would have shaped the person you were meant to become. While you think and plan and hesitate, the world keeps turning. People move on. Doors close. The version of your life that could have unfolded fades into the realm of what if. You do not see the cost in the moment because it is invisible. But over time, it becomes the quiet ache of a life that feels smaller than it should have been. Think of Robert, a software developer living in Boston. He had always wanted to write a novel based on the stories from his immigrant grandparents. The idea lived in his mind for over a decade. He would think about it during his commute, jot down notes on weekends, and tell himself he would start writing seriously once work calmed down. The delays felt reasonable. Life was busy. There were bills to pay and responsibilities to meet. 10 years later, Robert sat at his computer staring at a blank document and realized the stories he wanted to tell had lost their urgency. The characters that once felt alive in his imagination had grown distant. The novel never happened. Not because he lacked talent or time, but because he kept waiting for the perfect moment that never arrived. The relationships he could have built through writing groups, the growth he could have experienced through creative discipline, and the sense of purpose that would have come from finishing the book, all remained out of reach. Robert did not lose dramatically. He lost quietly through years of waiting. That is the true cost. The opportunities you never see because you never begin. You feel the weight of this cost in your own story too. The experiences you have postponed, the growth you have delayed, the life that feels just slightly out of focus because you are still waiting to start. And it all begins with one deceptively innocent sentence that has probably crossed your lips more times than you can count. The dangerous sentence, "I will start tomorrow," has stolen more potential than any external obstacle ever could. Small delays accumulate into years through the simple repetition of postponement. Each tomorrow feels harmless. Each small delay feels justified. But over time they compound into a life defined by what you meant to do rather than what you actually did. Your potential slowly disappears, not with a bang, but with the quiet repetition of one more day of waiting. The sentence feels comforting in the moment because it promises future action without requiring anything today. But the brain records the pattern. It learns that tomorrow is always soon enough. And before you know it, years have passed, and the person you could have become is nowhere in sight. The most emotionally powerful example comes from someone like Elena, a 58-year-old nurse living in San Francisco. She had spent 30 years dreaming of traveling the world and volunteering in clinics in remote places. As a young woman, she had even saved money and researched programs. But each time the moment to leave approached, she told herself she would start tomorrow. There was always a reason, a family obligation, a work commitment, a sense that the timing was not quite right. The sentence became her constant companion. Tomorrow I will book the ticket. Tomorrow I will give notice. Tomorrow I will finally live the life I imagine. Decades slipped by in this way. Her body aged. Her energy for adventure diminished. When she finally retired and looked back, she realized the world she wanted to see had changed and her own capacity to explore it had narrowed. the relationships she might have formed, the impact she might have made, and the version of herself that would have emerged through those experiences were gone forever. Elena did not cry dramatically when she shared her story. The pain was quieter. It was the pain of a life that had been lived mostly in her mind while the real world waited outside. She looked at younger colleagues and whispered the warning that still echoes. Do not let tomorrow steal what today could give you. Most people are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by the endless conversation happening inside their own minds. Most people are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by the endless conversation happening inside their own minds. But here is the liberating truth that changes everything. The way out of that mental prison is not through more thinking or better analysis. It is through action. Simple, imperfect, courageous action. The moment you begin to do, even when you do not feel ready, the conversation in your mind starts to lose its power. You feel that shift happening right now, do you not? The weight that settled in after the last chapter is already beginning to lift because something inside you recognizes that relief is not found in another round of reflection. It is found in the first small step you take today. You have carried the burden of overthinking long enough. Now it is time to discover how action creates the confidence you have been waiting for all along. You do not need more motivation. That is the biggest myth in the entire world of self-improvement, and it has kept more people stuck than almost any other lie we tell ourselves. You have probably spent years believing that if you could just feel that surge of inspiration, the way you see it in videos or read about it in books, then finally you would start. You would wake up energized, ready to chase the life you want. But motivation is a fleeting visitor, not a reliable foundation. It comes and goes with your mood, your energy, your circumstances. Waiting to feel ready is exactly what keeps you trapped in the same patterns because the brain is wired to conserve energy and avoid discomfort. It will always find reasons to delay until the perfect emotional state arrives, and that state almost never does. The psychology here is clear. Action does not follow motivation. Action creates it. When you move first, even in the smallest way, your brain chemistry begins to shift. Dopamine starts to flow not from the fantasy of future success, but from the reality of progress, no matter how tiny. You stop waiting for the feeling and you start generating it through doing. Think about how this myth has shown up in your own life. You tell yourself you will hit the gym when you feel motivated. You will reach out to that contact when the right words come. You will launch that project when the stars align and you feel unstoppable. But the days turn into weeks, and the motivation never quite shows up in the way you hoped. The waiting becomes another form of the prison you just recognized. It feels responsible. It feels wise. Yet it quietly steals another month, another year from the life you could be living. The emotional tension you feel as you hear this is not judgment. It is recognition. It is the part of you that has always known the truth, but has been afraid to admit it. You do not need to feel ready. You only need to begin. Let me tell you about Emily, a 41-year-old graphic designer living in Melbourne, Australia. She had wanted to start her own freelance studio for years, focusing on branding for small, eco-friendly businesses. She read every book on entrepreneurship, watched countless motivational talks, and even created vision boards that covered an entire wall in her apartment. She told herself she was building her mindset, getting mentally prepared. But the motivation she waited for never arrived in full force. There was always a reason to hold off. The economy felt uncertain, her current job was stable, her portfolio needed just a little more work. Years passed this way while she stayed in the same role, growing more frustrated and exhausted from the constant internal debate. One ordinary Tuesday, she decided she was done waiting. She did not feel motivated. She felt tired and doubtful. But she opened her laptop anyway and sent a simple proposal to 3 small businesses she admired. No grand plan, no perfect pitch, just action. Within weeks, one of them responded, and suddenly, the motivation she had chased for so long appeared on its own. The project led to another, and within 6 months, Emily had quit her job and built the studio she once only dreamed about. The story stays with you because it proves the point so clearly. Emily did not gain motivation and then act. She acted first, and the motivation followed like a loyal shadow. You can do the same. The myth is exposed now, and the path forward is simpler than you ever allowed yourself to believe. Now that we have shattered the idea that motivation must come first, let us look at something even more subtle that might be fooling you every single day. It is time to explore the difference between motion and action, because understanding this distinction could be the moment everything starts to change for you. Motion versus action is one of the most important psychological distinctions you will ever make. Being busy is not the same as moving forward. Motion is all the activity that feels productive, but keeps you in the same place. You research endlessly, you organize your workspace, you make lists and attend workshops and read articles. It looks like progress. Your calendar fills up. People around you might even comment on how driven you seem, but none of it creates real results. Action, on the other hand, is the direct step that moves you toward the outcome you want. It is the phone call you make, the page you write, the risk you take. The productivity trap is seductive because motion releases small amounts of satisfaction without requiring the vulnerability of real effort. Your brain loves it. It feels safe. It feels responsible. Yet it is the reason so many intelligent, capable people look back after a decade and wonder why their life still looks exactly the same. You have fallen into this trap yourself. Maybe you spent weeks planning a new habit instead of simply doing it for 5 minutes. Maybe you attended networking events and collected business cards, but never followed up with a single person. The motion felt good in the moment. The action would have changed everything. The hidden cost is the slow erosion of your belief in yourself. Each time you choose motion over action, you reinforce the idea that you are the kind of person who prepares but does not deliver. The emotional weight of that pattern is heavy, but recognizing it right now creates the space for something different. Consider James, a 36-year-old project manager living in Toronto, Canada. He dreamed of writing and publishing a book about leadership lessons he had learned the hard way during his career. For over 3 years, he attended writing conferences, joined online communities, bought expensive software, and created detailed outlines that filled multiple notebooks. He felt productive. Friends would ask how the book was coming, and he would proudly describe his process. But the manuscript never grew beyond those outlets. Motion had become his comfort zone. He was busy with the idea of being a writer without ever doing the writing. One weekend, after a particularly honest conversation with his brother James, finally saw the pattern. He sat down at his kitchen table and wrote the first 300 words of chapter 1. They were not perfect. They were not even particularly good, but they were action. That single evening led to a daily writing habit, and 18 months later, the book was finished and accepted by a small publisher. James did not become a writer by planning to become one. He became one by writing. The story hits close because it reveals how easily we can confuse activity with achievement, and how quickly real action can break the illusion. With this distinction clear, we can now turn to the heart of what this chapter is really about. Let us examine how confidence is built rather than found, because this understanding will rewire the way you approach every challenge ahead of you. Confidence is built, not found. It is not something you discover inside yourself after enough positive thinking or enough preparation. It is the direct result of repeated action. The psychology of self-belief shows us that your brain updates its image of who you are based on evidence, not on wishes. Every time you take a step, no matter how small, your nervous system registers that evidence and begins to adjust. You prove to yourself that you are capable. The science of momentum supports this completely. Small, consistent actions create neurological pathways that make future action easier and more automatic. Your brain starts to associate you with competence rather than hesitation. Self-belief grows not from grand declarations, but from the quiet accumulation of moments when you did the thing you said you would do. This is why so many people who seem naturally confident are not special. They simply have a longer history of doing before doubting. You can feel the truth of this in your own body right now. Think of a time when you finally took action on something that scared you. Remember how the confidence appeared afterward, not before. That is the mechanism at work. The prison of overthinking loses its grip the moment you give your brain new evidence to work with. Take Rachel, a 29-year-old nurse living in Edinburgh, Scotland. She had always wanted to speak at medical conferences about patient advocacy, but the idea terrified her. Public speaking felt impossible. She spent months reading books on confidence visualization exercises and even joined a local group for practice. Yet the fear remained because no amount of thinking could provide the evidence her brain needed. One afternoon, she submitted a proposal anyway. It was accepted. Her first talk was shaky. Her voice trembled and she forgot a key point, but she finished. The audience responded warmly and something shifted inside her. That single imperfect action became the foundation for 3 more invitations the following year. Rachel did not wait until she felt confident. She acted, and the confidence arrived as a byproduct. Her story reminds you that the psychology works the same way for every one of us. The evidence you create through doing becomes the belief you carry forward. Now that you see how confidence follows action, we can address one of the biggest obstacles that still stops most people. It is time to explore the power of imperfect starts, because this concept might finally free you from the perfectionism that has been quietly sabotaging your progress. The power of imperfect starts is one of the most freeing insights you will ever encounter. Beginners often outperform perfectionists precisely because they are willing to begin before everything looks right. Perfectionism keeps you frozen because it demands flawless conditions and flawless execution from the very first attempt. But learning happens through mistakes, not around them. The brain grows strongest when it is allowed to experiment, fail, adjust, and try again. Every error provides data. Every clumsy beginning builds the muscle of resilience. When you give yourself permission to start messily, you remove the pressure that has kept you stuck, and you open the door to real growth. The emotional relief in this truth is profound. You do not have to be ready, you only have to be willing. You know this pattern intimately. You have postponed projects because the conditions were not perfect. You have held back from sharing your work because it did not meet your impossible standard. The cost has been years of unrealized potential. But imperfect action changes the game completely. Consider Thomas, a 52-year-old small business owner living in Auckland, New Zealand. He wanted to expand his hardware store into an online presence, but the idea of building a website overwhelmed him. He was not tech-savvy, and every tutorial he watched made him feel more inadequate. Instead of waiting until he felt prepared, he hired a local college student for one afternoon, and together they launched a simple bare-bones site with just 3 product categories. It looked basic. The photos were not professional. The navigation was clunky. But customers started ordering online within the first week. The early mistakes taught Thomas what his customers actually wanted, and within a year, the online side of his business had doubled his revenue. Beginners like Thomas outperform perfectionists because they prioritize movement over appearance. His story shows you that the path to mastery is paved with imperfect starts, not flawless plans. Building on this foundation, let us now look at a practical tool that can defeat the resistance you feel almost instantly. The 5-minute breakthrough is simpler than it sounds, yet it carries the power to change your entire relationship with starting. The 5-minute breakthrough works because tiny actions defeat resistance in a way that grand plans never can. When you commit to just 5 minutes of the thing you have been avoiding, your brain stops mounting its full defense. The task feels manageable. The emotional barrier drops. And once you begin, something remarkable happens. Your brain chemistry begins to change. Dopamine starts flowing, resistance fades. The emotional state that once felt impossible suddenly becomes accessible. Starting changes everything because it interrupts the overthinking loop and replaces it with forward momentum. You have probably experienced this before without realizing the science behind it. The key is to make the start so small that refusal feels ridiculous. You can test this right now in your own life. Pick the thing you have been postponing and commit to 5 minutes. Watch what happens inside you. The shift is real, and it is available immediately. Picture Sophia, a 34-year-old teacher living in Cape Town, South Africa. She had wanted to learn Spanish for years so she could connect more deeply with her students' families. But the apps, the classes, the practice all felt like too much. She kept putting it off, telling herself she would start when she had more time. One evening, she decided to try the 5-minute breakthrough. She opened a language app and practiced for exactly 5 minutes. The next day, she did it again. Within 2 weeks, the 5 minutes had naturally stretched into 20. 6 months later, Sophia was holding basic conversations with her students' parents, and the confidence she gained spilled into every area of her life. She did not overhaul her schedule. She simply started small and let the momentum do the rest. Her story proves that tiny actions are not trivial. They are the doorway to transformation. Once you experience the breakthrough of starting small, you become ready for the next level. Let us examine the momentum effect, because this is where small actions begin to create results that feel almost magical. The momentum effect is the beautiful chain reaction that happens when one small action leads to another and another. Success compounds not because each step is enormous, but because each step makes the next one easier. Your brain begins to expect progress. Your identity starts to shift. What once required tremendous willpower becomes almost automatic. This is why success feels like it snowballs for some people while others stay stuck. The difference is not talent or luck. It is the willingness to create that first piece of momentum and then protect it. Every completed action becomes evidence that you are the kind of person who follows through. The compounding happens quietly at first, and then suddenly the results are undeniable. You are already feeling the pull of this possibility. One small action today could be the beginning of a completely different trajectory for your life. Let me share the story of Marcus, a 47-year-old accountant living in Chicago in the United States. He had struggled with his health for years, carrying extra weight and feeling sluggish. He knew he needed to exercise, but the thought of joining a gym or committing to an intense program felt impossible. Instead, he started with one small action. He walked around the block for 10 minutes every morning. That single habit created momentum. The 10 minutes became 20. The walking became light jogging. Within 3 months, he had lost 20 pounds and felt more energized than he had in a decade. The momentum spilled into his work and his relationships. He started cooking healthier meals. He reconnected with old friends for weekend hikes. One small daily action created a chain reaction that transformed his entire life. Marcus did not overhaul everything at once. He simply protected the momentum he had started and let the compounding do its work. All of these pieces lead us to the most important transformation of all. It is time to explore what it really means to become the person who executes, because this identity shift is where lasting change becomes inevitable. Becoming the person who executes is the ultimate identity transformation that happens through repeated action. You stop seeing yourself as someone who dreams and starts and stops. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. Repeated action changes your self-image at the deepest level. Each time you do what you said you would do, your brain updates the story it tells about who you are. The dreamer becomes the doer not through force of will, but through consistent evidence. The transition feels gradual at first and then suddenly undeniable. You carry yourself differently. You speak with more certainty. Opportunities appear because you are now the kind of person who shows up for them. This is not positive thinking. It is identity reconstruction built on the solid foundation of action. You can sense this possibility opening up inside you right now. The version of yourself that has been waiting is ready to step forward. The most inspiring example comes from Elena, a 55-year-old librarian living in Lisbon, Portugal. For 30 years, she had quietly written poetry in notebooks she kept hidden in a drawer. She dreamed of publishing a collection, but the fear of judgment and the habit of overthinking kept her from ever submitting her work. After hearing about the power of action, she decided to become the person who executes. She started small. She sent one poem to a local literary magazine. It was rejected. She sent another and another. Each submission was an act of becoming. Over 2 years, she submitted more than 50 pieces. Some were accepted, many were not. But with every envelope she mailed, her identity shifted. She no longer saw herself as someone who wrote in secret. She became a poet who shared her voice with the world. Her first collection was published when she was 57, and it went on to win a regional award. Elena did not wait until she felt like a real writer. She acted like one until the identity became true. Her story is the most inspiring because it shows that it is never too late. The transition from dreamer to doer is available at any age as long as you are willing to let action reshape who you believe yourself to be. You do not gain confidence and then take action. You take action first, and confidence follows. You feel that truth settling in your bones right now, do you not? All the years of waiting for the perfect feeling, the perfect plan, the perfect moment have finally been exposed for what they were. A beautiful illusion that kept you safe but small. Today you have the key. The next step is yours to take, and it does not have to be big or impressive. It only has to be real. You already know what that step is. It has been whispering to you for a long time. Take it. Not because you feel ready, but because the readiness comes after the doing. You are no longer the person trapped in endless conversation inside your mind. You are becoming the person who acts, and therefore the person who believes. If this chapter has moved you or given you the push you have been needing, I would be grateful if you took a moment to like the video right now. It helps the channel reach more people who need this message. And if you want to continue this journey with us, please subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. Another life-changing book awaits in the very next video. Thank you for listening with an open heart and for choosing to show up for yourself today. I will see you there. Until then, keep choosing action. It is the only thing that ever truly sets you free.